Picture this. It's 1346, and you're a French knight charging full speed toward what looks like a small English army at Crécy. Your heavy armor gleams in the afternoon sun, your destrator thunders beneath you, and victory seems absolutely certain. You're part of the most elite fighting force in medieval Europe. Nothing can stop French heavy cavalry. But suddenly the ground beneath your horse gives way. You're falling into a concealed pit filled with sharpened wooden spikes, your magnificent war horse screaming as it tumbles with you. As chaos erupts around you, English longbowmen emerge from hidden positions like ghosts, their arrows darkening the sky as they rain death down on your confused, panicking ranks. Your fellow knights, the pride of French nobility, are dropping like wheat before the scythe. You've just fallen victim to one of the most devastating military deceptions in medieval history, and you're about to witness how a vastly outnumbered English force will slaughter the flower of French chivalry. This wasn't luck. This wasn't superior numbers or better equipment. This was pure, calculated outsmarting. And medieval knights were absolute masters of psychological warfare and tactical deception. Today, we're diving deep into the shadowy world of medieval warfare where brilliant minds trumped brute force, where a single clever stratagem could turn a hopeless battle into legendary victory, and where the deadliest weapon wasn't forged in steel, but in the human imagination. Medieval knights weren't the mindless, honor-obsessed warriors Hollywood portrays them as. These were sophisticated military professionals who understood that information was power, and power was survival. By the 12th century, the most successful knights had developed intelligence networks that would rival modern spy agencies. Take Richard the Lionheart during the Third Crusade. Before every major engagement, his knights would infiltrate Saladin's camps disguised as merchants, pilgrims, even enemy soldiers. They'd map defensive positions, count troops, identify key commanders, and, most importantly, study psychological weaknesses. Richard knew that Saladin was proud, that he valued personal honor above tactical advantage, and Richard exploited this ruthlessly. These night spies didn't just gather information, they spread disinformation. They would deliberately get captured and accidentally reveal false battle plans, plant fake documents about reinforcements that didn't exist, or spread rumors about mysterious new weapons. The psychological warfare was so sophisticated that enemies would sometimes retreat from battles they were winning, simply because they'd been fed false intelligence about massive incoming reinforcements. The feigned retreat wasn't just a tactic, it was high art. William the Conqueror's use of this technique at Hastings in 1066 was so masterful it deserves its own military textbook. His Norman cavalry would thunder toward Saxon shield walls, engage just long enough to seem committed to the fight, then suddenly wheel around and flee in apparent terror. But here's the genius part. The retreat looked absolutely authentic. Knights would throw down weapons, some would fall from their horses, others would cry out in genuine-sounding fear. The Saxons, seeing their enemies broken and fleeing, would do what every warrior instinct demanded: pursue and destroy. But the moment those disciplined Saxon shield walls broke formation to chase the retreating Normans, they signed their own death warrants. The fleeing cavalry would suddenly reform, wheel around, and charge back into the scattered, disorganized pursuers. What had been a disciplined army became isolated individuals running across open ground, perfect targets for heavily armored knights. This single deception tactic won William the Crown of England and changed the course of world history. Medieval knights became masters of psychological manipulation, understanding that battles were won in the mind before they were ever fought on the field. They would deliberately arrive at battlefields days early, not to rest, but to stage elaborate psychological theater. Knights would parade in their finest armor, display captured enemy banners as trophies, and conduct loud, boisterous feasts within sight of enemy camps. The message was clear. We are so confident of victory that we're celebrating before the battle even begins. This psychological pressure would crack enemy morale before the first charge. Some knights took it further, hiring actors to play the roles of famous warriors supposedly fighting in their ranks. Imagine facing what you believe is an army led by legendary heroes, only to discover later that your legendary opponents were actually traveling performers in borrowed armor. They understood timing perfectly. A knight might deliberately insult an enemy commander's honor just as the sun was setting behind his forces, knowing that the glare would blind charging enemies. They'd time their psychological provocations to coincide with tactical advantages, turning pride into a weapon against their foes. Castle sieges became laboratories for medieval deception. Knights didn't just batter walls, they waged psychological warfare against defenders' minds. They would construct fake siege engines that looked terrifying but were actually harmless, while their real weapons remained hidden until the crucial moment. Some knights became masters of siege theater. They'd stage fake executions of captured defenders, actually their own men in enemy colors, conduct elaborate religious ceremonies asking God to curse the defenders, or display captured enemy banners upside down. A psychological insult that would enrage defenders into making tactical mistakes. The most brilliant siege masters would simultaneously attack defenders' supply lines and their hope. They'd intercept messages, replacing them with fake letters describing how relief armies had been destroyed, or how the defenders' lord had abandoned them. Castles that could have held out for months would surrender in weeks, not because their walls were breached, but because their spirits were broken. Medieval knights were constantly innovating, adapting their deception techniques to counter new threats and exploit new opportunities. When facing superior numbers, they wouldn't just choose favorable terrain, they'd modify the battlefield itself. Knights would dig hidden trenches, construct concealed obstacles, and create false paths that led enemies into carefully prepared killing zones. They'd plant stakes in muddy ground that would snap horse legs, dig wolf pits covered with branches and leaves, or create false bridges that would collapse under enemy weight. But the real genius was in making these traps look accidental. Enemy scouts would see what appeared to be natural terrain features, old abandoned defenses, or simple obstacles. Only when it was too late would they realize they'd been led into an elaborate death trap designed months in advance. But here's what I want to know from you. You're a medieval knight commander facing an enemy force that outnumbers you 3-1, but you have 2 weeks to prepare the battlefield. What's your strategy? Do you go for classic misdirection with decoy forces, set up elaborate traps and false terrain, use psychological warfare to break their morale before they even arrive? Or would you try something completely different? Drop your battle plan in the comments below. I want to see which of you has the tactical mind of a medieval master. The most successful knights understood that wars were won through networks, not just battles. They cultivated relationships with merchants who could carry messages across enemy territory, monks who had access to castle libraries and maps, and even enemy servants who could provide crucial intelligence about their master's plans and weaknesses. These networks operated like medieval versions of modern intelligence agencies. A knight might learn that Lord Geoffrey always led his cavalry personally, that Sir William had a weakness for wine that affected his judgment, or that a particular castle's garrison was secretly planning to switch sides. This information would then be used to craft specific tactical approaches designed to exploit individual psychological and strategic weaknesses. Knights also became masters of disinformation warfare, deliberately feeding false information through these same networks. They'd plant stories about magical weapons, spread rumors about plague in their own armies to discourage attack, or circulate false reports about their numbers and positions. These medieval deception tactics didn't disappear with the end of the Age of Chivalry. They evolved into the foundation of modern military and political strategy. The principles established by these brilliant tactical minds about misdirection, psychological manipulation, intelligence gathering, and information warfare are still taught in military academies and intelligence schools worldwide. From Napoleon's use of deception at Austerlitz to modern military operations, the DNA of medieval night tactics is everywhere. The understanding that battles are won in the mind, that information is the ultimate weapon, and that the smartest strategy trumps brute force. These lessons learned on medieval battlefields continue to shape how conflicts are fought today. The next time someone mentions medieval knights, don't just picture noble warriors in shining armor charging bravely into battle. Remember them as they truly were. Brilliant, tactical minds who understood that the greatest victories come not from the strongest sword or the heaviest armor, but from the most creative and ruthless application of human psychology and strategic deception. These weren't just warriors. They were the world's first military psychologists, master manipulators who could turn an enemy's strengths into weaknesses and transform certain defeat into stunning victory. In a world where a single battle could determine the fate of kingdoms and dynasties, these remarkable men chose brains over brawn and changed the course of history forever. What fascinated you most about these medieval mind games? Have you seen similar psychological tactics used in modern warfare, politics, or even everyday life? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the tactical genius of medieval warfare, smash that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Because we're just getting started exploring the incredible strategic minds that shaped our world.